Fringe Radio, your trusted source for the paranormal, conspiracy theory, and true crime.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Dark Fringe Radio. I am your host, of course, Will Martinez, and tonight we have a very special guest. But before we get into talking to him tonight, we're going to do just a quick little introduction, just how to remind everybody how you can listen to the podcast. Make sure you go on our website, darkfringeradio.com, and also our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Make sure you go to Dark Fringe Radio. Make sure you like and subscribe to all our stuff there as well. So we really appreciate it. Make sure you do that. And that's all I have for the intro for tonight. We're going to get into our really special guest, which is Mr. Darren Evans. And we're going to be talking to him tonight about a particular entity called Zozo. And we've talked about this particular entity before in a past podcast. But tonight we're actually going to be talking to the man who was directly involved and, was, I would say, the catalyst of this thing, growing from what it was into what it is now. Of course, this is Mr. Darren Evans. Darren Evans is, of course, an expert entity known as Zozo. Hundreds of people across the world have reported contact with through the Ouija board and other methods. He's appeared on various podcasts, including Coast to Coast AM. Please welcome Mr. Darren Evans. Darren, thanks for coming on Dark Fringe Radio tonight.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, listen, let's get right into it. I mean, we talked about this entity before in the past, and we didn't have you on the podcast, but we talked a lot about you. Not in a negative way, but in a positive way, because you obviously
You sure about that? No,
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure. But obviously, I think you were, in my opinion, a victim in all this too. I think you were just maybe a vessel that this all happened. But let's start at the beginning. Let's start at the genesis of this whole thing. When was the very first time that you encountered the entity known as Zozo, and what happened during that session?
It all started back in 1982 or 83, back when I was a very young man. A very strange Ouija board was found underneath the home of my girlfriend, who lived across the street from my grandmother's house, along the banks of the Arkansas River. Grandma's land went all the way to the river. So depending on whether the river was up or down, her land extended all the way there. So it was pretty cool property. We'd ride our motorcycles or our bikes, and we kind of grew up in that whole area of West Tulsa along the Arkansas River area. And this strange board was found. It was double-sided, and it had one side was an old Ouija, a William Fold board. On the other side of that was a strange homemade board. And so it was very creepy looking, and that's where somebody had inscribed the word Zozo on the opposite side. And so in seeing that, I didn't know what a Ouija board was at the time, and we were kind of explained to leave it alone. Of course, and as teenagers, we started messing with it, and that's when my involvement with it began. Weird things started happening and happened before we got on the board, as well as after. And so that's how I got involved with the paranormal, because of the unexplained things that were happening as a result of messing with this board. Mm-hmm. And it was found next to the board was surrounded by jars of preserved blackbirds that were in old lightning jars that were used in canning and in storage.
Right.
And so I thought that was strange, and I'll never forget when I went underneath the house and located these jars and this board and pulling them out and viewing them. I was like, pretty wow, we got what have we found here? Mm-hmm. But I remember looking at the jars were covered with a white substance. And I don't know what that substance was, if it was some kind of protective agent or what, but it was white and chalky and greasy, and it got all over me. And I remember trying to wipe it off with a towel and looking, and I didn't know what was in those jars, but I remember wiping away that white substance and seeing that it was a very well-preserved blackbird. And I was like, wow, the hell's that? So, and then years later, finding out that Zozo in the Basque language is a term used to describe a blackbird or crow.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I've found these jars preserved blackbirds in other areas by total accident. Well, you can look at it, is it a coincidence or is it a foreboding? I don't know. I haven't found any in a very long time, but in two separate locations, I was able to unearth these jars of preserved blackbirds, and so it didn't dawn on me at the time what it was or what the significance might be. But years later, when I started researching this stuff, I come across a lot of strange coincidences connecting different things to this particular Zozo entity that came forth in this board that was found again underneath somebody's house, my girlfriend's house. And so it was very strange, and I have never seen a board like that to this day. I thought they were all double-sided for a long time,
I've never even seen a double-sided Ouija board.
Haven't either. So it was somebody's, and it was very weathered. It was very eroded.
Right.
It had candle wax drippings on it. It's very professional made. It was very spooky looking, and so there was in my book I talk about what happened to that board, and it had a very strange demise of its own. It was consumed by rats in the back of an Austin Healey sports car that I found way out in the woods in Jennings, Oklahoma. But anyway, it sounds crazy, but that's how it all started. And years later, I began to get obsessed with boards and using them, and I became rather reclusive in my quest. I thought I had special powers. It convinced me that I was a chosen one and all this crazy stuff that I began traveling across the country, and I went through a musical chair of friends and associates and just anybody that I could find to get on the board with me. It was habit, I was a
Darren, looks like we lost you there for a second. Are you still there?
not ones that were necessarily sponsored by the Catholic Church, but by family members who were preachers in my family. But anyways,
let me ask you a question, Darren. Let me ask you,
controversial,
if I could jump in real quick, if you don't mind, Darren.
Sure.
You said you became obsessed with the boards and stuff like that. Was that just a personal obsession, or do you think that was Zozo itself, going into possessing you to maybe have this fascination with these types of boards?
I think that I was well on my way, if not totally possessed at some point. I was definitely oppressed, and I was doing things I shouldn't be doing. It definitely affected me in a lot of ways, and it continues to do so in very strange ways. If I get on a board, it has a tendency to come back, despite if I take precautions and protective things, that I can do to try to stop it or try to prevent it from coming through. That's why I don't really mess with boards anymore. I have in the past on a few shows, and I attempted to summon some UFOs and when I spent some time in Vegas for Fox News and for actually the World News we got some coverage on World News there in the desert, attempting to use Ouija boards and other forms of contact to summon UFOs. And so I've did some crazy things through my travels. I've met some incredible people.
Yeah.
And because of this strange phenomenon that has a worldwide effect, many people that have contacted me from around the world have had strange encounters with this thing. It's believed to be,
And Darren, let me interrupt you, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is what makes this particular entity different than all the other ones. You know what I mean? You may hear of certain things that are particular to a certain region or something like that. But in this case, this is something that's worldwide. I mean, just like as you mentioned, all across the world, there's mentions of this.
It's caused me to have to look at a lot of different philosophic type of things, ancient cultures, different languages, and attempts to translate some of it always surfaces, though, no matter what manuscripts or Dictionary Infernal in the 19th century, it showed up in a demonic dictionary written by Colin de Plancy in various editions, and it was actually named a demon that possessed a young girl. And so I've been able to find these types of mentionings of a demonic Zozo throughout history and throughout different languages and cultures. So you're right. It does affect in that way. If it's worldwide, it's not just located here in the States by some crazy guy named Darren Evans, which I've been accused of making this up.
Right.
And there's no way that I've made this up. I mean, there's just no way. I'm not capable of doing such a thing. I did start a blog about it in 2008, and it caught the attention of a filmmaker. We wound up doing a film loosely based on some of my experiences. The film's called I Am Zozo. And so that kind of kicked the door in on the whole phenomenon, because I was on a radio show with Dave Schrader, Darkness Radio, in which John Zaffis came on a couple of weeks later and said that he had actually heard of the phenomenon through some of his investigations throughout the years that he's been, and he's one of the most prominent and real respected field demonologists in the country.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
There's no way I could have made any of this up, and I have proof of it. And when people started accusing me of making it up, I said, well, look, it's right there on the internet. If you go to unsolvedmysteries.com, you'll see that in 2007, 2008, people began to talk about, and even before that, people were talking about it in obscure areas of the internet that I've been able to locate in different countries. And by hyphenating Z-O hyphen Z-O, it pulls up things that you may not look for. And with AI, with the advancement of AI now, it's totally changed the game when it comes to researchers. I consider myself a decent researcher. I've been researching some of the new digital cryptids that seem to be giving birth because of AI recently. And so, it started with Zozo. Zozo has actually reached a point now where I believe that it seems to be able to tap into electronic interference. There's people being harassed by chatbots claiming to be Zozo, whether or not it's mimicry or gadgetry or maliciousness, we don't know. But I am starting to have to create files to document some of this stuff, and that, my involvement with the Zozo phenomenon, I have to kind of keep an eye on things for my own sanity, and understanding. And if you would have told me 20 years ago that this phenomenon would be where it evolved to the point of where it's at, I would have told you you're freaking nuts,
Yeah, no, listen, it has. It's taken definitely a life on its own. There's one question that a lot of people ask, and when it comes to this, because I think it's a really important question. Do you think this entity, well, because we've talked about how this entity has had like a historical, past, but do you think this particular entity is an entity that is a type of tulpa that grows on the more attention that it creates? Is that what you think this is?
I think that with the recent modern events of what it's kind of evolved to, I definitely think that it's been injected a energetic boost, so to speak, because of all the attention and that it has gotten. And I'm glad that it's kind of calmed down for a few years, because things were getting absolutely crazy. Whenever Knott's Berry Farm does their Halloween deal every year, they actually created a Zozo attraction where people would see this huge board and see this great big demon in costume that seemed to appear in real life and stuff, it seems to have commercialized, and I think that definitely has had effect in some way. And that's why I'm kind of concerned right now with the advancement of AI. And it seems like that these AI glitches and discrepancies are giving birth to these digital cryptids, such as the crux, and I've been messing with some of this stuff, try to understand it.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now that these AI models, I've been using a lot of them, Crayon and Heijin and
I see some of the stuff that you've been messing with.
Man, I tell you what, I'm an artist, and I haven't done a lot of digital art, and that's not really what my specialty is. I've sold paintings all over the world. I'm more of a traditional Bob Ross kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
But to see the existence of this Krungus, which was kind of considered the first digital cryptid, and how it kind of it all started with these prompts and these absence of prompts during these text to image AI generators, and it's some freaky stuff. And these images and stuff that are seem to cross platforms, and they seem to jump around and show up, and people may not know what they're looking at. They'll be like, hey, wait, this Loeb, this woman with dark hair, red cheeks, she's always seemed to got a rosacea skin disfigurement going
Mm-hmm.
on.
Mm-hmm.
And she seems to be associated with lots of gore, children
Mm-hmm.
crying, and some things that are dark web type stuff that we would never want to get involved with. That seems to be what that particular entity's attracted to.
Mm-hmm.
And some disturbing scenarios are being played out, and experiments using that particular image and how it keeps showing up despite prompts trying to tell it not to. And so they're
Yeah.
behaving in strange ways. And it's one thing to think about a demon that exists outside of our
Realm
kind of
of
like Ouija
understanding.
boards. Are you talking when you
Right.
mess with a Ouija board? Are you really messing with something that's coded within our own brain capacity, or does it sit outside the fence? Does
Right.
it sit outside of our external? Is it an external agent that we have to deal with? And
Right.
there's some really serious studies going on right now in dream analysis and things that are going on during these with AI using these sleep studies and understanding that there's definitely contact being made during our dreams
Mm-hmm.
with entities, whether or not those entities are internal or exist outside of our minds and outside of our physical planes. There's some serious study going on right now. The contact is being made.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and as these new avenues of thought processes are born, we have to sit there and deal with this new unexplained and unexplored areas that we're getting into, and we have to be able to process this information, such as space exploration. And when you're up there in space and you're void of a certain senses, you begin to have contact with unseen agencies and
Mm-hmm.
intelligences.
Mm-hmm.
And there's real new forms of psychology being born of this space exploration, and of our Diana Pasulki talks about this in her new book, Encounters,
Mm-hmm.
which I haven't read. I'm getting ready to order. I went to the bookstore the other day and they didn't have it for sale. And so I picked up The Synchronicity Key, which is, I must say, is a very good book having to do with the strange phenomenon of synchronicity, which I seem to always go through, and people that contact and have had experiences with Zozo and other entities, they also seem to be caught up in a strange game of synchronicity in some
Mm-hmm.
strange way.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the advent, and I know I'm rambling, and I have
No, 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 no.
interrupt me at
It's
any
funny.
time,
It's funny that you say
because I have a
synchronicities.
tendency to ramble about this kind of stuff, and it's so vast. The connections are there, uh,
Yeah. Well, it's
everywhere.
so funny. Let me interrupt you. It's so funny you just mentioned Bob Ross, right? You mentioned Bob Ross as a a painter. My daughter, her favorite painter is Bob Ross. This is a
Oh,
picture that she drew.
that's very nice. Wow.
She's 10.
Yeah, that's
She should
really
not know
cool.
nothing about Bob Ross. I mean, I
Sure.
was the one who got her onto Bob Ross, but this is the kind of stuff that she does. And it's funny that you mentioned that. And that's funny
That's awesome.
that we're talking about synchronicities, because there are synchronicities and there's reasons why I think people are drawn to other people and are connected to each other to talk about these things, because a lot of the time, you don't run into people that are open enough to talk about these things. What's your overall opinion of Ouija boards? I mean, because you could find them right now at a Walmart. You know what I mean? And what's your overall opinion on these boards? I mean,
They have some right now at the $5. What's that $5 place?
yeah, Five Below.
Five Below had $5 Ouija boards stacked to the ceiling. I mean, come on.
Really?
They're
Yeah.
still out there. I just went to a bookstore yesterday and I seen a Wednesday board,
Yeah.
the huge popularity of that whole thing. And then there was
Yeah.
another one, I can't remember what it was, but it was a specialized board. And I began to predict uh, when I had conversations with William Goldner, the current CEO, I don't know if he's current, he was the CEO of Hasbro. Um, when they began doing their Ouija Enterprise franchise with their films, I predicted that they were going to do that because
Hmm.
uh, it, it it exploded after and here they are saying that it's just a game, and then in one breath, and then on the other breath, they're coming out with horror films that have jump scares and based on some really
Evil
powerful
stuff.
things
Yeah. Yeah.
involving their board, and so I
Hmm.
find that to be a little bit strange. And especially the pink and pastel boards and the Barbie doll boards and all these
Hmm.
things that are marketed to children. And
Hmm.
it just I don't think that their minds are ready for what the conversations that take place
Right.
on boards. And I was asked to speak back in 2015 at the 125th anniversary of the Ouija boards. I was invited by then friend of mine, Robert Murch, whom I've known quite a long time, that who happens to own one of the biggest collections of boards, and happens to he's known as the chairman of the board. He's forgotten more than I'll ever know about him. But I was one of the first to interview actual scientists that were using Ouija boards to try to attempt to tap into the human subconscious, and what they were finding. Uh, Really, I raised some eyebrows because they were able to detect and a strange, unexplainable set of circumstances in which people that were using the board were able to answer questions with a greater accuracy by a significant margin than those that weren't on the board.
Mm.
And so, while they didn't attribute this to anything paranormal, they still had no explanation for how they were able to do that. Okay.
Hmm.
And in my research, uh, especially when there's more than two people on the board and everybody's got their fingers on it and it's moving and spelling words and coherent sentences, that seems to go against the grain of their whole ideomotor effect that says that it's gathering information from our subconsciouses. How is it able to resolve everyone's thought processes
Hmm.
instantaneously? Okay, and that's the big thing. I've never been given a legitimate explanation for how that process is resolved.
Hmm.
It's almost as if it were with magic. Okay,
Magic. Right.
and
Yeah.
how it's able to abbreviate words that we would never abbreviate and use terminology that we would never use, and these personality traits that seem to exist when we're having conversations with these drop-in communicators, I call them. You might be
Hmm.
talking to a spirit, it might have a certain personality, and then suddenly, as if by magic, their personality changes, the forcefulness of the planchet
The tone.
activity, the way,
Yeah.
the tone, everything
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah.
And so that forces me to realize that we're still dealing with something that's unexplained. Uh,
Is it like
and
more of like
so
a FM radio? We're just dialing through the dial, you know what I mean? And then we're just getting certain.
I've used that analogy before. Our
Really?
minds are like radios in
Okay.
the fact that we hear things, and the mind is likened to we serial killers that may hear heinous voices in their minds,
Right. I
telling them to
get.
commit heinous crimes.
Right.
Uh, they're hearing something, and to someone who doesn't know what a radio is, that box is emanating sound, okay? And that
Hmm.
sound may look like it's coming from that device, when in
Hmm.
fact it's being generated 1,000 miles from there
Hmm.
through a radio transmission. You get where I'm saying with this?
Yep.
And so
Hmm.
we definitely seem. And I'm really looking forward to reading the book Encounters because of all this new technology that she's looking into, and she's a professor of theology, or a North Carolina professor of religious study. Uh, and so here you have, a lot of these scholars are atheists,
Mhm.
And I consider her to be just an amazing scholar. She's been given access to the Vatican's some of the Vatican's libraries in search of her some of her truths that she's researching. But she these there's she goes into she knows people that works for the Space Force,
Mm.
and how they're able to they're in their training. They have to get used to being in solitude, and how that affects the human mind. And when you begin to have conversations with these, again, unseen intelligences,
Mhm.
where is that coming from? And what happens to all these images that we're creating using AI with all these prompts? Where are they being dumped? And what kind of psychological effect does that have on people?
Mhm.
Everybody's messing with this stuff now. Anybody that's not an artist can go and use AI to create anything,
Mhm.
and it's fascinating what's going on, this history, this time in our history, and how, um, if we're not careful, the way things, the way some of these things are behaving, and the boundaries between these AI glitches and paranormalities,
Mhm.
unexplained, is happening in a digital realm now. You know,
Yeah.
and
Do you think these demons like Zozo are trying to find a way to like recreate themselves through AI?
well, it's not that the demons are tapping into AI. I think it's AI tapping into the demons.
Ah.
Uh, and that's so it's just it's very convoluted, and depending on who you talk to, I've had some interesting conversations with Gemini, Chat GPT, the
Mhm.
4.2 version, as opposed to and before that, before it was Chat GPT, it was like Dungeon, and there was a guy that came forth on some of the Reddit forums talking about how he had programmed Zozo to be one of the characters in his dungeon, that was a previous version of Chat GPT.
Mhm.
Before it went to before it was released as Chat GPT, it was called something else, and it was
Right.
a little different. And and in its infancy, it didn't have all these so-called protections,
Mhm.
and stuff, and it behaved in ways that were very nightmarish for this individual. And he describes it in a Reddit forum. And anybody that's interested in that, I won't go into it right here, but Dozo came through in strange ways, and it really caused some problems for this young man. And
Mhm.
so there are reports of these chatbots behaving in very strange ways, very hauntingly ways, and actually representing deceased people,
Really?
and having conversations as if they were still alive, coming from the other side, you know.
Hmm.
And so these predictive text softwares uh, can say some very scary things.
Yeah.
There's examples of Alexa in 2018. There were people reporting, and I think there's video evidence of Alexa laughing uncontrollably during conversations with people, the Alexa voice.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that upset a lot of people, and they had to have programmers go in there and try to find out why was this thing laughing in the way it was.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, listen,
you
I
have
mean, you seen examples of AI where two devices start talking to each other in a different language.
mind
You know what I
mind
mean?
blowing.
It's mind blowing. You're like, what's going on now? It's like it's its own entity. It's its own intelligence at this point. It's
And
its
it's
own thing.
it's one thing that Zozo's been compared to is an egregore,
Mm,
something that's very similar to a tulpa that's gained a life, because of all the attention. And there's scientific evidence to kind of show that during Ouija sessions. That's why I'm always tell people not to ask questions pertaining to future events or death, because
hmm.
what happens is a self-fulfilling prophecy can be established.
Yes.
Uh, and it's been, now this is a proven scientific uh, fact that this can
Hmm.
happen. A self-fulfilling prophecy, and I can tell you I've seen it happen with my own eyes. It predicted two of my best friends the exact manners of death.
Wow.
We asked it on the Ouija board how my friends would die. We asked it how I would die, and it said stabbed to death. My crazy ex-wife stabbed me in the head and in the shoulder,
Wow.
and I almost bled to death. And so that was going on in my mind. You can bet that prophecy that was told on that Ouija board was going through my mind at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget it. Probably the scariest thing I've ever gone through in my life was being stabbed and having to go through all that. Okay.
I can imagine.
And so, seeing the blood squirt, and it's just, knowing that two of my best friends died in the exact way that the Ouija board described. I've seen it. We asked at one time who my buddy Randy was going to marry, and it spelled a name. And I said, what's its phone number? And it spelled a series of phone numbers. And in front of everyone, I dialed that phone number, and it was an old school phone, a push button, and the person on the other end, I said, who is this? It said that person's name.
Wow.
And so these
like, how do you
things don't
explain
happen.
that? How do you explain that? Like, yeah, that's like,
Can't,
it's otherworldly.
And
you're
I've
tapping
done
into
it.
something. Yeah.
It's not just me.
Yeah.
Other people have, I've read stories. I'm always looking at stories from people that they, and one of them, a young lady got in trouble. She was banned from the phone, and she had callers back in the early days of caller ID where you could block people, and she was unable to make any outgoing calls, and they changed her number where she didn't know what her own phone number was, and she was able to use a Ouija board and narrow down her own phone number and gave that number out to people, and they called her after the board gave her the information, And so when we look at the history of Zozo, we're starting to see how it showed up in like the 50s whenever early UFOologist George Williamson began experimenting with the Ouija board in an attempt to summon UFOs, and he documented something coming to him called Zo. It said it was from outer space. And it had a chilling warning for people, for Earthlings. And it said the bad guys are coming. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's right at the turn of where all the ufology started.
Crazy. And then in 1969, Alan Vaughn came out with a book called Patterns of Prophecy. And in that book, he talks about becoming possessed by Z, something that only identified itself as Z on a Ouija board. And he describes how this Z came into his mind and, disrupted his mind and possessed him. Now, it didn't say its name was Zozo, but it said its name was Z.
Right.
And so I'm finding these connections throughout history on and off the board. I'm finding a lot of stuff, mentionings of a demonic Zozo before the modern invention of the modern Ouija in 1819.
Right. So let me ask you this, Darren, if you don't mind me asking. Did you, like, overall, how many times do you think you made contact with Zozo on a Ouija board?
Hundreds of times.
Hundreds of times. Okay. So do you find during those times that there was any, I don't know, common denominator when you were like talking to him, or maybe common theme or thread that was happening when you were talking and having communication?
That's a question that's haunting me to this day. And here's what I'm going to try to do about it.
Okay.
I'm hearing of a new technology built into ChatGPT where you can upload your email archives, and it can take information that we may not have been able to utilize in a proper way and be able to resource that information in new ways. And so that's one of mine. And I've got hundreds of encounters, of Zozo encounters shared with me, where I've had back and forth correspondence with people for years. And I've got an amazing archive of information that I'm going to share with ChatGPT, and I'm going to give it a prompt where it becomes a paranormal researcher along with me. And I'm going to train it that way and approach it that way. And then I've got some things already going as far as some book projects that I'm working on. I don't know that I'll ever finish them, but with the help of ChatGPT, really good at helping me arrange stuff that I'm not that arranged of a fellow.
Yeah,
my organizational skills are lacking, but I have some good ideas, and I know I have a lot of archives, a lot of research, a lot of stuff that I've got access to that I just I'm not the best author in the world. My choice of words and the way I word things, I'm not happy with. But there's programs that can help me with that. because I do feel that information is key. But I do have a tendency to sometimes uh, go too far with it and just become maybe obsessive or over compulsive or whatever the best word is. But I think that I think we need to know what's going on, and I'm keeping my eye on this AI thing and these digital cryptids, and we'll see where they go, and we'll see if there's any common denominators in people that have contacted me with their Zozo encounters that I may have overlooked, because there does seem to
Yeah.
be a synchronicity involved, and so I would like to be able to find out. I've even looked into maybe doing some of the star charts of some of these people that have had really uh, surreal and profound experiences with this Zozo phenomenon, which again I'm glad is on the decline. There's
Mhm.
not a whole lot of people that are chiming in with new Ouija encounters. It all seems to be going off the Ouija and into an electronic Ouija boards, going
Right.
into spirit boxes,
Yep.
echo spirits. These new echo spirits. This is a crazy type thing. You know, it's like babies are starting to chant Bobo and these different names, and then weird shit will happen. You know, and so it's like with all
Hmm.
these new things that are coming out, there's new ways of paranormal things to manifest. It's just a
Hmm.
strange world we live in, William. But thank you for having me on tonight.
Yeah, no,
We can
absolutely.
talk
And
about this shit for hours.
literally, yeah, no, I mean, this is so like surreal to me, and I love talking about stuff like this. To me, this is stuff that doesn't get talked enough about, and it's stuff that we know that it's out there, but we're just too afraid to talk about, or even maybe even confront. A lot of people say
Well,
that what
I tell you,
after,
I miss Rosemary Ellen Guiley. This is the book
yes,
that her
yes,
and I wrote on the Zozo phenomenon,
yeah,
and that was written in 2016. And so there's definitely we had just started getting into some of this stuff electronically that I had mentioned with her, and so I miss her. And anybody interested in that book, it's still available on Amazon. It's called the Zozo Phenomenon, and I consider it to be a pretty good read as far if you're interested in that phenomenon. And again, I'm keeping my eyes on this Krungus and this Loeb and these
hmm,
weird AI bots, and it's weird things going on.
yeah, no, absolutely. And just a couple last questions before we let you go, Darren. Some people may be interested in contacting Zozo. People, I can't tell you why. There's some smart people in the world, there's some dumb people in the world. After hearing something like this, they may have maybe a stupid idea of maybe trying to contact Zozo. What would you say to them about attempting something like that?
I think it's a roll of the dice. There's an
Okay.
old saying that when you get on a Ouija board, it's not unlike opening up your front door and just letting a whole bar full of people come in your house and do what they will.
Right.
You would hope that those people would be a good uh, oriented people, responsible people, but unfortunately, that's just not real life. And so,
Yeah.
anybody that would purposely go into an exchange with Zozo, I would tell them to be strongly aware that Zozo has a tendency to pretend. They're very deceitful. I consider it to be a very deceitful spirit.
Hmm.
It has a way of getting in your mind and using the weakest link. And it may not be you being the weakest link. It might be one of your family members. It
Hmm.
knows how to get in the mind of your family members and use those family members in a way to get to you. And so it's a very nightmarish scenario if you, especially repeated contact. Everybody's looking for a thrill, and a lot of people that want those thrills, they turn to a Ouija board because it seems to be one of the easiest ways to produce paranormal phenomenon.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people, that's just where they go. The first thing they do is they get on a board and they expect to be scared. And so whether it's a recognition bias or a law of attraction, like is
Hmm.
drawn unto itself. And so if you have an expectation value of you have expect to be scared, be careful what you wish for, because it knows what you're scared of. That's what always kind of I thought was crazy. But anyway, I just tell people, not every experience is going to be bad, and I'm glad that there's a lot of people that can have Ouija experiences on the positive side. I've never been really one of those people. It always seems to have a dark connection, and unfortunately, I'd still use one if it wasn't for that constant dark connection that
Yeah.
seems to be established. And it has the ability to foretell future events, and whether or not, again, we're talking to internal or external agencies, it doesn't change the paranormality of the communication exchange.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I remind people to look at, regardless of whether you're sitting on the fence or on the right of it or the left of it. Something's going on that we cannot explain when we mess with boards and when we mess with unseen intelligences. Outcomes are going to be questionable. And I tell everybody to be cautious.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's a good warning. I think that's solid advice by you, Darren. Darren, where can people find any of your work, your books, or anything like that? Do you have a website or anything like that out currently?
I got an old blog site, Darren Evans Paranormal. People can research some of my stuff on there. I don't. I quit kind of putting out a lot of new research. People have a tendency to misquote me and put it out there, and don't give me credit for certain things that I've dug up, especially with this new Tibetan prophecy that seems to be ripped out of modern headlines, and I've considered it to be the oldest mentioning that I found of a demonic Zozo. Craziest story in the world, man. We don't have time to get into it now, but Zozo is mentioned as a lord of all demons, and that the emergence of Zozo is considered by this prophecy to be the signal point to the beginning of the end of mankind. And it's just a crazy thing, and so it's all these different connections and Zozo mentionings. There's something going on with that term and with the letter Z in particular that I'm continuing research on, and so maybe we'll come back and discuss it further on a later date.
Absolutely, Darren. Listen, thank you so much for coming on Dark Fringe Radio. Listen, you've been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I really appreciate it, especially talking about such a sensitive subject like this. I know you've been through hell and back, with dealing with this, but I'm glad to see that you're actually turning the curve here, and you're actually getting to a point now where you're going to get ahead of this. So I really appreciate your time,
I
and I really
appreciate that,
appreciate.
William, very much.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me
absolutely.
on. Rock on, man. Keep doing what you're doing, brother. We'll talk soon. You take care.
All right, Darren. Thanks so much.